Tales of the Walking Dead is a show that's tough to describe. Each episode is a self-contained story, but there are connections and themes that carry over from episode to episode. It's short at only 6 episodes, but it's an interesting and unique show that gives audiences something different than what they see on The Walking Dead. Are you curious as to how episode 6 ended? Let's dive in. So, how does the episode start? The final episode of season 1 begins with the couple standing in the dark. In the middle of the woods, this couple surrounded by eerie screams and whisperings. They take off running, but are they running towards something or away from it? Daylight arrives and the woman, Daniella Pineda, mentions that a zombie is still following them. She then proceeds to mention that she knows where they are and that there may be a place they can stay for the night. Eric asks her why they'd only stay one night. After all, it's not safe out there. Adalia tells him that the woman who lives there is a healer and into spells and other mystical stuff. By the time they arrive at the gate, it's dark outside. Upon entering, they are immediately cast into an interesting scenario of a woman's voice whispering in Spanish. The voice says, "And now in the hour of our death, amen." Adalia looks around, but no one is there. Next, what's the premise of this episode? Ultimately, it's pretty clear from the beginning of this episode that it's going to center around the paranormal, a classic haunted house tale. With weapons drawn, they set off to explore the house, only to find it covered in religious figurines and candles lit. The duo is convinced they're alone, yet still takes caution. Suddenly, a woman in white appears before them. They're still trying to get over the shock of seeing another human in the house with them when she yells at them to leave. In an attempt to convince the woman to let them stay, Adalia begins to cry and begs in Spanish. The elderly woman takes pity on them and offers the couple food. So far, the show gives us a fascinating experience, with depth and intrigue we haven't seen in previous episodes. This is an impressive feat, as the show's been particularly great up until this point. Ultimately though, the atmosphere of this episode is where it shines. From the beginning, we're immersed in a quiet and eerie world, with strange noises and whispers throughout the episode. As a result, the tension gradually builds until it's at an all-time high. So, what does Eric do next that causes problems? As the trio eats dinner at the house, Eric casually asks the woman why she won't let them stay. He points out that it's freezing outside and she has all this space to herself. Since it's just the two of them, they won't take up much room. The old woman tells him no again and asks them to leave. At this point, Eric becomes mad and grabs her, and she begins to choke. He hits the edge of the table, falls to the ground, and dies. Talk about a bit of an issue, seeing as they just killed their host. As Adalia washes the woman's blood off, she looks down at her grayish reflection in the water and suddenly sees old hands around her throat. She begins to choke, but when she glances at the mirror, she's left reeling as the hands have disappeared. So who is the old woman really? At this point in the episode, we're left wondering who the mysterious old woman really is, and what her connection to all of this is. Is she a witch, as Adalia claimed, or just an old woman with a bad temper? The episode does an excellent job at building suspense and keeping viewers engaged. There's no question about it. The episode is one of the best in the series. It's a perfect blend of horror and suspense with a touching story to boot. Because of the outstanding job the episode did, it's safe to say that Tales of the Walking Dead is a show worth watching. And plus, 6 episodes isn't exactly a huge time commitment. And now, guess who starts having some serious nightmares? That's right, it's Adalia. As she's lying in bed, the floorboards begin to creak, and suddenly a woman appears at the side of her bed. At this point, it becomes clear that Adalia isn't really sure what's happening, and she doesn't know if it's real or just a nightmare. Suddenly, the candles in the room blow out, and Adalia sets them back on fire, calling the name of the old woman. She wanders around the house, repeatedly saying, "He didn't mean any harm," until she finally makes her way to the basement. There, she begins to hear voices and ultimately finds a room dripping with blood from the ceiling. Of course, instead of fleeing, she explores the room even further. That's when a zombie startles her and we're left wondering what on earth is going to happen next. So, can Adalia get away from the zombie? Well, maybe she could, maybe she couldn't. When Eric checks the house out, he doesn't find anything. Adalia insists that there was a zombie, but Eric tells her it wasn't real and she just had a bad dream. At this point in the episode, we're left wondering what's really going on here. Is Adalia losing her mind, or is something more sinister at play? The next day, though, it gets way worse, as the Jesuses on crucifixes come to life and begin climbing down the wall. They jump on Adalia, who tries desperately to swat them off. off, but she's eventually forced into a room where she finds a picture of the old woman. At this point in the episode, we are seriously at the edge of our seats. There's nothing better than a bit of The Walking Dead, mixed with horror straight out of a grotesque thriller. Yikes. Moving on now, wanna know who comes back from the dead? Well, not really, but Maria does yell at Adalia from the other side of the gate. Eric, who's been sitting in a daze this whole time, suddenly perks up and tells her that Maria is alive. He then goes on to say that they have to go back for her. Of course, Adalia knows that's not true, but Eric is adamant about it. As Eric argues that Adalia is the one who's crazy, she tries to convince him that it's all in his head. However, Eric is convinced that Maria is alive and he won't leave without her. And as the pair argues, we're shocked with a pretty incredible revelation. These two aren't exactly innocent. It turns out they used to torture and kill people for fun, which explains why all those dead bodies are in the basement. As Adalia comes up from the basement, she's covered in blood and reveals all of their victims are down there. So, how does it all end? As the window of the house shatters, breaking, Eric and Adalia realize they have to leave. However, as they fight each other, La Doña finally appears before them. She tells them that even in death, this house belongs to her, and she's going to make sure they never leave. She grabs their bodies and pushes them around the house. As she does, Eric continues to insist that this is all in Adalia's head. As the woman uses her powers to open the door, Eric and Adalia turn on each other. Eric blames Adalia for the situation they're in, but ultimately it's all too late as they end up dead, lights flashing as they're sucked into the house by the roots of a massive tree. So, is that the end? Bingo, it's the end. As the lights flicker in the house one last time, we're left wondering pretty much what all of it means, and why we have goosebumps running down our spines. Honestly, that was a pretty wild ending, but it worked. It brought everything full circle and left us with a sense of satisfaction. It's safe to say that this was one of the best episodes in the season, if not the series. If you're looking for something different than The Walking Dead, then look no further. Tales of the Walking Dead is definitely worth watching. This episode is especially haunting, and definitely serves as a satisfactory reminder that horror is still alive and well. So, what does this episode get right? Well, for starters, it was absolutely amazing. One of the best episodes in the series so far. The story was intriguing, the acting was great, and the ending definitely left us wanting more. The episode also did a great job of building suspense throughout, something that's often lacking in horror. Instead of just throwing jump scares at us, the show really took its time to slowly build the tension until we were on the edge of our seats. Plus, the twists and turns throughout the episode were definitely unexpected, but in a good way. This is an incredibly well done episode, and it's definitely one of our favorites so far. That's it for this recap though. Go ahead and let us know in the comments what your favorite part is and what you think we're going to see in the next season. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.